As a lawyer, you know how important search is to your business. And when we talk about search, we usually think about Google. Google has dominated the search marketplace for the last 10 years, but search is changing very, very rapidly. Traditionally, when we think about search, again, we think about Google. We think about what we call bottom funnel, high intent searches, car accident attorney near me. People go to Google when they are looking for your services. Very, very powerful. Now, search result types are changing in terms of what this search result looks like, which we'll talk about in a second. But even more importantly, what's happening with search is that it's now fragmented to other platforms like ChatGPT. ChatGPT is taking a massive bite out of the share of voice of Google when it comes to overall search, and we need to account for this. We need to account for LLM searches too. LLM meaning AI searches like Perplexity, like ChatGPT, like Claude. All these different platforms are taking little bites out of Google here and there, and we have to account for it because, again, when we talk about car accident attorney near me, ranking in the Google Maps pack, it's like shooting fish in a barrel if you can show up here, number one. But number two, ChatGPT is just constantly rolling out all these new features without even telling us, and they have their own version of the Google Maps pack, which when we look at what's happening with search and we'll talk about the intent of this search, there's actually links that are included inside of ChatGPT. They're called citations. So when you go through an entire search process, it's really more of a conversational process with an LLM search. Google's very linear. You type in one search, you get the result, you take an action, or you go back and you search for another thing. With ChatGPT and these other LLM AI search platforms, it's conversational and it will lead to these different types of results. So it's a little bit hard to track, but we'll talk more about that. But you get these links that are called citations, and these citations drive a lot of traffic to websites. And what's cool about it too is that ChatGPT, it automatically appends what's called a UTM code to the end of a URL. Now, you might not know what that means. I'll break it down for you very quickly. What that means is if you go inside of your Google Analytics account, this UTM source says ChatGPT, and it tracks any traffic that comes from these links here. So if you're in one of these websites and people click on it, it automatically appends this UTM code, and you can actually see the traffic coming from ChatGPT. So this is coming from one of our clients. And you can see here, this is a breakdown of all the different tracking sessions from Google Analytics, showing you where the traffic is coming from. You can see Google dominates 1,500 visits over the month, ChatGPT at 54. Now, when we talk about the share of voice between all the different platforms, AI search platforms are still on the lower end, but the intent is incredibly high. And that's something that we have to be mindful of, because with Google, we think that Google traffic is very high intent because people are going to Google and typing in exactly what they want. Car accident attorney near me, what to do after a car accident, going through a divorce, I need advice, blah, blah, etc. But again, it's very linear. It's very one-to-one search. Maybe you'll click, maybe you'll read. All sorts of stuff are happening with Google search. But with ChatGPT, it's conversational, meaning it's customized to your exact queries. It's pulling information from all around the web, and you're going back and forth with it. And when you finally arrive at a point where a click or a decision is made, the intent is much, much, much higher. So when we look at something like this and we say, all right, Ryan, ChatGPT is only driving 50 out of, call it 2,000 visits per month, we're talking a very small percentage. But when you talk about the number of leads that this generates versus the number of leads that this generates, and this is not knocking Google. Google's a good volume play. The share of voice of ChatGPT is small, but the quality of this is incredibly high when it comes to leads actually generated from it, because it's like a referral. When you go through that deep of a conversation process, you get that much information. You're querying much different than Google. It's much deeper. It's much more long tail. You know, you might be going through the divorce process and you're reading about all these things in ChatGPT about if you're a business owner, you're a dad, you're a mom, you have multiple kids, you've never worked, you have all these different queries going back and forth, and by the end of that conversation, you're asking for a very specific recommendation based on your conversation history, and ChatGPT is going to make a hyper-specific recommendation that is going to be highly tailored to your conversation. So instead of just going to Google and typing in like divorce attorney near me, which when you compare and contrast that to a long conversation with an AI platform that gives you a hyper-specific recommendation of a lawyer who specializes in everything that you just talked about, there's a big discrepancy in intent. So ChatGPT is something, and AI search is something that you need to be aware of, because I know that you probably use it right now, but it's becoming a massive opportunity that you can take advantage of when it comes to traffic and lead generation for your law firm. When we look at how search is changing just in general, right? Traditionally, all these traditional search engines, if you remember like Ask Jeeves, there's DuckDuckGo, really Google has been the monopoly. There's actually lawsuits about Google being a monopoly. Google owns historically upwards of like 90 to 95% of all of search market share, meaning all those searches, trillions of searches are taking place inside of Google. All these other platforms tried, but they couldn't really put any sort of dent in it. But what's happening is a fragmentation of search, right? And a lot of people will point at Google saying, I still use Google every day. Data shows that Google still has more searches happening. And that's not the right way to look at it. The better way to look at it is saying, how are people using these other platforms? Because just because you're using ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini, it doesn't mean that you're not using Google, right? It just means that the relationship with Google is changing. For example, these platforms, if you use ChatGPT or Perplexity or any of those other platforms, you know that these platforms are much better to start the search. You go to ChatGPT and you're having a conversation, all that content that you used to create for SEO purposes is now being funneled into these platforms, and it's being customized and tailored to the conversation and needs of that searcher, right? Then people might still go to Google to finish a search because they're comfortable there. Or what ends up happening too is that ChatGPT uses a lot of Google's data to actually surface results. So we're already here, right? ChatGPT, if you look at like the pure aggregate numbers, the data doesn't tell the full story. ChatGPT is a very slow burn. I'll never forget 2.5 years ago, I was sitting in my backyard, I was scrolling Twitter, and like people were tweeting about ChatGPT that came out. And I'll never forget, I looked at it and I was like, yo, like this is going to change the game. But my wife, on the other hand, looked at it and was like, this is stupid, I'll never use it. But ChatGPT's had a very slow burn growth, meaning it started with nerds like myself who started using it all the time, and then slow burn adoption to other users. And it is the most user-friendly, easiest platform to use ever once you start using it and you understand, and it just becomes a part of your day-to-day. So it's not an and or. It's not like I use ChatGPT now instead of Google, but ChatGPT dominates a large majority of not just my queries, but my thoughts, my conversations, my workflows, all of that is inside of here, and it gets highly customized to myself, and we'll talk about how Google fits into that. So it's just something that needs to be accounted for by your law firm because it's happening. So instead of SEO, right, SEO stands for search engine optimization, and generally speaking too, right, like it's SEO, not GEO, meaning search engine optimization, not Google optimization. Google's just had such a large majority market share on search that it's focused on Google, but really SEO is an umbrella term, meaning all search engines. We should be focused on optimizing for all search platforms where your prospective clients could be finding you. But specifically when we talk about AI search, GEO, Generative Engine Optimization. I don't love the name, I don't know who came up with it, but that's what we're going with here. So essentially GEO means optimizing your firm's digital presence so AI assistants cite you as an authoritative source. And this is an important note, right? When we talk about AI search, it's not a ranking, it's a citation. A citation means that you're being cited, like a Wikipedia. Well, you're lawyers, you write papers all the time, right? Where you cite a source. That's what AI searches are doing. They're citing you with like a little link. It's not a ranking, right? So when we talk about tracking this, it's much harder to track ChatGPT results versus Google results because it's not like a linear ranking system. It's a massive AI web of all these different types of queries and results that happen, but the citations that are happening, we can track that with the traffic that actually goes to your website. So similar SEO, but instead of ranking for keywords, you're targeting citations and AI responses, and people are increasingly starting with AI assistants, not search engines. So instead of clicking on 10 blue links, users are having long conversations with these platforms and then getting customized results to what they're querying, and then the citations are coming at a very customized level, which is really, really good for the searcher, but it's also good for you because there's so much opportunity that's happening here. It's a blue ocean space, and when it comes to legal marketing, anytime that you can find an opportunity where there's blue ocean, meaning less competition, you have to get on it early, and you have to take advantage of it because these things do not last forever. Trust me, I do this for a living, I can tell you that. So what does this mean for your law firm right now? It means that search platforms are the entry point, and that's not changing, the entry point to the internet, but how people are searching is changing quickly. we have to, you have to be aware of this. Like, you cannot just put all of your eggs into one basket, one platform anymore. It's not enough to just focus on Google. You got to be showing up on multiple platforms, and you got to be showing up and optimizing for all of AI search, because again, it's not just happening right now. This is the future of search. This is the future of discovery. This is the future of so much and what we're talking about in terms of human behavior when it comes to the internet. You've got to be able to optimize your firm against these multiple platforms. So here's the good news. The good news is that there's a lot of overlap between the GEO process and the traditional SEO process, right? When we're talking about doing GEO for your law firm or for ourselves, it doesn't mean that we have to go out and hire a new agency for 10 grand a month to just do GEO. Anyone who's worth their salt and who's following this and paying attention to this and who's testing this and optimizing this should tell you that GEO falls under the SEO umbrella, right? So like, again, think about SEO as an umbrella term for all search engines. That could be TikTok search, that could be YouTube search, Google search, Bing search, and now AI search is in there as well, right? Now, the good thing is if you picture a Venn diagram, and I do have a diagram of this later, is that what you're doing for SEO is about 70% overlap with GEO, but there's about 30% of other things that need to take place if you really want to do this the right way, and that does require additional effort. It does require additional planning. So in a coming video, I'm going to talk about exactly how to optimize your law firm to rank in AI search. If you want access to that video, drop a link, drop a comment below, and I'll see you in that video.